Oh, hello everyone. I've got Mike, and it's really nice to see you here. Warm welcome to you all to this Designing the New Usual number 3, which is all about becoming diverse. This is a community event series from a partnership between the Index Project and Designit. I'm Phil. I work at Designit as well. I should probably introduce myself. And I have part of my job is finding stories around sustainability and DEI and innovation and lots of other things within our experience innovation world. So I'm really happy to be here to share today with you as well. Together with our team, Ditta from the Index Project and her team, we've already had 2 virtual events looking at leadership and sustainability and looking at how they can be rethought and kind of seen from a different perspective. And now, in the spirit of DTNU, as we've shortened it, we've thought of a new way of doing it. Rather than be online, it's lovely to be in person as well, and also recorded for people at home. So we hope you enjoy this as well. Yes, so we're going to turn our attentions to diversity, or becoming diverse, if you like. And in prepping for today, I remembered that the Index Project had this line on their website. It said, it takes all types of people to design a world that works for everyone. And I really remember that because to me that's about celebrating people. It's about celebrating humanity, if you like, and shared progress. And taking the opportunity to recognize our differences and accounting for them as well. But also acknowledging that we've all had different starting points, and we're at different places along the way on our DEI journeys as well. So what we do know is the fact you're here now and you're watching this after the event, that's a positive, and that's something we should hang on to. So we asked in the promotional material, how can you take things from intention to implementation? And that's something we want to discover with our guests today as well. There's some obvious and perhaps not so obvious benefits to diversifying the workforce. I'd love to explore that. Love to explore what the obstacles are as well, and what kind of progress we're seeing as well. I'm going to need your help to do that. So in short, let's see what we can do more of or less of to take action as well. So, I've said to dive into this, we need your help, and I have some great people joining us today as well. On stage, I'd love to say first hello to Aram Ostadian-binai. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So, Aram, I'll give you a little introduction. So, you're the founder and CEO of The Soulfuls, a social entrepreneur, DEI advocate, and a branding consultant. You're also the founder and director of the DEI creative agency Norm Media, working with diversity and inclusion. And in 2018, which is 3 years ago now, you founded the women's community, The Soulfuls, which works to create space for more diverse talents in areas of creative and media as well as entrepreneurship. Yes. That's a good intro, wasn't it?
Thank you.
And we're also joined by Niddal El-Jabri. Thanks for coming here.
Thank you.
Founder and strategist at Liberate Agency. Niddal has a background as a founder of the NGO Mino Denmark, which helps to help ethnic minorities in Denmark to be equal and participate in society. Your Liberate Agency specialises in inclusive marketing, helping brands navigate successfully into being diverse, equity creating and inclusive, and reaching the full potential of their target group. I hope that sums you up nicely as well, or at least scratches the surface of it as well.
Easy work.
And it's great to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. And a little later, we'll also be featuring an interview we recorded before this event, especially for today, in fact, from Andrea Lee, who's a senior manager of user experience research at LinkedIn as well. She'll be sharing her personal reflections and experiences from her work setting and her experience there as well. And if you're tuning into the event, into the recording of this event, then you'll also get 2 bonus interviews, which you in the audience can also watch after the occasion as well. One with Tina C. Nielsen, who's an anthropologist and inclusive behavioral designer, with some fascinating insights, if I may say. And also Sina Fazlpour, Assistant Professor of Philosophy and Computer Science at Northeastern University in the USA. Both of them offering fascinating perspectives on diversity and DEI as a whole. You won't want to miss them either. As always, we'll make time for your questions and comments and reflections towards the end. If you've got something during our discussions, please stick your hand up as well. Really open for that as well. We'd love to hear from you. So, it's time to get things started.
Hello, Tina. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
And now I mentioned your name, Tina. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yes, I'm a diversity, equity, inclusion expert. I've worked with this for about 20 years by now. I'm also an anthropologist and a designer applying behavioral science insights. And I'm the founder of a change organization called Move the Elephant for Inclusiveness. And I'm also the co-founder of an empowerment initiative called Inclusion Nudges, which is also a behavioral design methodology to create effective change.
And Tina, based on 20 years of experience in this field, can you tell us a little bit about why is it so hard to go from intention when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion to actual implementation?
Well, actually, the very simple answer is that there are a lot of stuck patterns that we stick to. And also the way the human mind works has a huge impact on this, because the part of the brain that is really dominating our behavior and the decisions we make it has really not evolved that much. We'd like to think of ourselves as really rational human beings making well-informed decisions and behaving accordingly to our values and intentions. But the fact is, that's not the case. So actually, a lot of the things we do is based on some mental shortcuts, familiar patterns, a tribe mentality we have that makes us have a natural preference for similar others and things we recognize. And that means that in a split second, we jump to conclusions, and these are often flawed conclusions.
And then, of course, as a response to this, or as a kind of like guideline, you developed the inclusion nudges, which was why I really wanted to talk to you today, of course. Could you tell us a bit about what are the inclusion nudges?
Inclusion nudges is really applying the whole theory around behavioral economics and nudging, which is becoming more familiar now, and also combining that with a really deep insight and knowledge and expertise around diversity, equity, inclusion, race, sexism, and all those issues related to that. And that has then become something that we spread through these practical guidebooks, because what people often lack is the examples, the practical things they can do, the actions they can take in everyday life. So it doesn't have to be something that's kind of hanging out here alone. We do when we have the time. It really has to be integrated in basically everything we do. The way we talk, the way we have conversations, the way we make decisions, the way we innovate, the way we hire, just everything.
I think it would be really great to know, where can we find these resources to go look for ourselves and get started on the inclusion nudges?
Mm-hmm. So there's a website for the initiative. It's called inclusionnudges.org. And there's also a free blog. So every month we post new examples, and on the website, people can find 4 practical action guides. One is for like full-blown change makers with 100 examples. And there are 3 shorter action guides with 30 examples, which is targeted leadership and talent selection and motivating others to actually engage in this. It's called Motivating Allies.
Do you have any kind of like one thing that you would tell our viewers that this is a thing you can go to work and you can do this tomorrow to start being on this journey to more diversity and inclusion?
Well, I think, I mean, we have so many. So on the spot, if I have to choose one, I would actually suggest that people start using default designs. And a default is, something, it's kind of like the anchor of a decision we make. And if we change that, we actually start seeing some of the hidden patterns that are driving our behavior, but it also starts opening up our mind to other solutions. So it could be, for example, if you're in a situation where you have to make a choice, you have to choose projects. Maybe you have 4 different projects you have to choose from. So instead of, talking about which of these projects or ideas are the best, you flip it and say the default is that all these ideas are the best. Now we have to find the facts for why not for each of them, because else your mind is going to go look for the familiar patterns. And then you're very high risk of ending up with the same kind of idea or something that's similar to something you've previously done, because your brain will recognize that as most competent.
Default design, that's noted down. Thank you so much, Tina, for speaking with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm going to hand over to you, Niddal.
Yeah.
You're going to take the floor for a short presentation around understanding DEI from a minority perspective.
Yeah.
Niddal, the floor's yours.
Thank you. Oh, this is a wobbly stage. Hi, everyone. I decided I would just start off by setting the tone because, we sit on Zoom and Team and Google Meet, and we go like, hi, guys. And we don't think about it because it's so incorporated into our language how we every day exclude based on gender, disability, ethnicity, religion, in every aspect, and we all do it. We all have this because it's so deeply rooted into and programmed into how we walk into the world. So for me, always trying to practice this, hi everyone, is, I think, a good way to start off. So just, I want to start like on a fundamental basis for me. I mean, we have to understand that diversity is a fact. It's if you have it, it's a factual concept, but it does not mean that you're also being inclusive at the same time. So inclusion is your behavior. It's what you do and what actions you put forward for everyone to be welcome. And equity is a value that we give to each other so that we can become equal when we are together. And the outcome of this is on an emotional basis of belonging. And at the end of the day, that is the big lack that we all have. This is like, we say like, the whole premise of DEI. When you have a minority background, such as me, I have a religious minority background, I'm a Muslim. I have a visual minority background, I'm brown. And I have an ethnic background that my parents, they were born in Palestine. And this whole concept of DEI somehow becomes a trend, and we see a lot of big corporates trying to put up a poster and a nice picture and look how inclusive we are. And I sometimes wonder, do you not understand that inclusion is a really nice buzzword, but for those who have lived it, to see all the flaws that comes with it, throughout their whole lives, this has always been a visual problem that we heard, whether it was in school, where we were in a workplace, or in a friendly relationship. We could always hear when we were not equal to the rest of the room. So this is not new. It's not a trend for us that reflect on this and have lived this life. If I'm being brutally honest, this is at best an educational tool for the people of privilege who does not understand the meaning of this at the end of the day. Werner Myers is an amazing inclusion strategist at Netflix. I love the work they do at Netflix with inclusion. I think they are absolute lead on it. So it's not to anything against it, but she has this quote that says, and I'm bringing it up because it's partially true, but it's also partially fake. And it says, diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. But it's false, because if I have to be invited and I have to be asked, then I'm only allowed to based on what you allow me to do, and that does not make me equal. At the same time, it has a harsh truth, because that is also the reality. I only get access to this job if you can look beyond my skin color, if you can look beyond my religion, if you can look beyond my gender, if you can look beyond my disability. This is the privilege that some people in power have, and those not in power are unfortunate not to have. So it is actually an amazing quote, but we have to understand it from both perspectives of things. And for me, as that, when being here and having this stage, I don't care about promoting what I do or where I come from. It's not important for me. What is important is that some people will be sitting listening to this, and they will maybe be attending it with their boss or with their friend, and they do not, in between them, understand this unbalance that is between their existence. And every time I get a microphone, I want to make sure that I represent that person that is in an unbalanced position and needs someone to speak on their behalf to make people understand that having a minority position in society is harmful. It's highly emotional process that you have to realize, and at the end of the day, we still live in a society where it's only with the acceptance of those in privilege and in power that we get to take part in it and we get to dance at the ball. And that's a problem, and we have to fix that if we want to move on. Oh, I also decided some basic tools. Don't mind the logo, it's a screenshot. Mind the other texts. So in base of what we do to screen for the work that we do, whether it is a campaign or a poster or a job application, in any sense, a strategic body of a corporate, here are some of the things when we have to communicate, what do we screen for? First of all, rule number 1, assure representation. Then force inclusive language and imagery, because we're still at the point where it's not a natural giving, so we have to force it because we have to show the right way of being. Consider visual and historical context. A lot of times when we do scenes where we have people from minority backgrounds represented in the picture, we don't take care of, they don't wear shoes inside if they're from a Muslim background, or you don't serve alcohol, or whatever it might be. And also there's the whole, our history and what we come from. So how we need to take care of that as well. And fourth, I would normally put as a 7th, but visually it looks prettier in the 4th. Change perspective. It's such an important thing. Is when we communicate, 99% of all communication out there is made based on middle-aged white man concept. We do not design our campaigns and pictures from the perspective of the person with a disability, from the female perspective, from the ethnic minority perspective, or from the religion minority perspective. But when we do, and I promise you, because we've done this many times, the reward is amazing. People become more emotionally involved with what you're trying to say. And then, obviously, examine tone. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone, is an example. Avoid appropriation. If you need a person in your picture that wears a headscarf, do not put a headscarf on somebody's head. Choose someone who actually wears it. It's such an important factor that we don't fake the imagery. We create a real imagery of what the story tells behind the person. And obviously avoid stereotyping. Too many times we fall into these. I mean, if you're a female, you know this. Like, you'll be constantly put in a box of not knowing, or not being able to, or not having the opportunity to, and like, don't keep making these imageries that were designed hundreds of years ago and that we still today have such a hard time coming over. And I think that's just around my 5 minutes. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Niddal. And before we dive into a discussion with you both, Aram is going to take the floor and talk to us about opportunities of culture diversity and how to attract young, diverse female talent. Take it away.
Everyone, welcome. We always start our every gathering with a huge welcome to all of you who made it here today. And yes, I want to tell a little bit about, you've heard a bit about my background, but I have worked in fashion and creative and media industry for the past 13 years. And what became one of my education in that time was, while these industries that I'm part of, we are part of creating culture, but we are not representing culture diversity. When we look at media, we can see over 70% of media and publications are mainly white or male. And when we look at the gender diversity between what is published, we see that the voice of women, every woman, for one voice of woman, there's 6 voices of men. So no wonder we get overheard. But this power and structure also means that voices of women and minorities and people of color doesn't become part of the narrative we keep telling them in media, in social media, to our young girls. But also it affects their opportunities, because visibility creates opportunities. This is our motto. And because they're not visible, it's hard for them to climb up the ladder, and their voices, their stories becomes unheard. So let's look at what things look like in the positions of power here in the Nordics. We have 2% of the executive teams here in the Nordics being part of what we call BIPOC community from Asia, Africa, and they are, I just need to see what, I cannot see, okay. And then 90% of the CEOs of the largest listed companies in the Nordics are male. So we have 10% women on top, and only 2% from culture backgrounds, culture diversity backgrounds. So what's the effect of it? Then we see campaigns that comes out, have missed the mark, telling our girls being white is beautiful. Or we get some headlines saying there is so much dynamic among the top leaders, which I cannot see. Or fashion claims to have diverse runway, and but when you look at the front row, they're all white. There you go. So, what are we telling to the next generation? That you are not part of the future. Isn't that true? You can't say what you can be. Growing up, I always wanted to be part of the creative industry. I writing poem, I writing and drawing and everything, but I never knew how I could be part of this industry. And it's no wonder, because I lacked role models. I didn't know how to do it in Iran, and I don't know how to do it in Denmark. This is me growing up. I have what I call 36 years of experience in learning to belong, lived across 4 countries and 20 cities, which means moving around different neighborhoods and different communities, and been in the creative industry for 13 years. But most of the time, wondering and figuring out why women and diverse talent run into closed doors almost 90% of the time. These are the barriers I figured for myself. So the reasons why we walk into these walls are we lack the network, we need access to knowledge from the inside, we need capital and financial support, but we also need visibility, and another barrier is inequality that is systematic, which we looked at before. So that's why I started the Soulfuls, because I wanted to create a safe space for young women to feel seen, to feel they belong, and they feel included. And then helping them to be introduced to role models who are making a change happen in their industries, because they are so important. Not only they are changing the industries, but they are also telling our girls, our young generation, what is their options, what are their options. So if you think about media, most of us will think about, okay, so if I want to work in media, so I need to be a journalist. Or if I want to be working in fashion, I need to be a designer. Or, you know, if I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I need to be looking like Mark or Steve or something like that. But that's not true. That's, you know, that we need to tell them the whole story. They need to know their options, because then they have the power to choose. Oh. Here. We launched our mentorship program back in October, and it was one of the comments that really stayed with me and really also reminded me why we do Soulfuls. One of the mentees came to me and said, here is the room of 20 powerful mentors that I follow on LinkedIn and Instagram, but they are here for me. Right? I was like, of course, like that's why we are doing this. And she was like, I cannot believe who I am, what I have to say, what my challenges are. It's important for these people. And I said to her, you have the same value of everybody else in this room. And of course, they are here to listen to you. Not only this, we are also going to do reverse mentoring when you will tell them what's up and what's down. So it's important in the feeling of seen and feeling belong and included. You put value in your diverse talents, in your team, but also people around you. And then you include them and you give them the power to decide and make decisions without you undermining them. And yes, so as Niddal was saying, invite them to dance, but really like let them also be the ones who invite you to come to dance, because you have the equal value and equal responsibility. So what is the narrative we are changing? We are working with the community that we are working with, the Soulfuls. We are focusing mainly on storytelling and role models, because we know they have the power to change what we think it's our perceptions. And we do networkings and events to give them knowledge, tools, and what they need. And as well, developing and personal development tools, which is through mentorship, allyship, and different programs. And at the same time, we also feel like we need to work, and we are helping companies to both attract but retain talents. So we work with them through their inclusive content and campaigns, but also now working through some bespoke programs like mentorship and events and allyship, and then DEI strategy. Because we also want, when we give our young talents to the companies, they know how to treat them well. There you go. Another example is when we have all the mentors gather, women from all different corners of the industries and from different backgrounds, different age, different ethnicities and culture, listening to each other, sharing stories about who they are and what they're doing. But also we encourage them to go deeper. So we really encourage the feeling of vulnerability and like what was difficult for them to come through. And they all shared. And what was amazing at the end of the circle, they all felt a huge feeling of connections. They connected on being a woman, first of all, being mothers or entrepreneurs, or being just the only one in the room for the most of the time, or the first one ever in a company, or basically just really kind of overcoming everything that we as women need to overcome. Because we need to make room for those stories to be part of our everyday life. What we see on TV or what we see on social media is affecting our young girls and telling them who they are. We didn't have that before, but we do have it now. So what we put out as campaigns or content out there, it matters. It's shaping personalities and it's shaping the future of a whole generation. So we need to make room for people to be able to, so they can reflect themselves into. So DEI needs your commitment, it needs your action plan, and it needs your investment, both in time, but of course also resources. So why should you DEI? Because it's the right thing to do. If that's not convincing you, or it's not, but let's postpone it. Let's look at other opportunities. We love the word opportunity in Soulfuls. It's innovation and creativity. Companies with inclusive cultures shown to have around 60% more in innovation and creativity and open-mindedness. And if that's not the trigger for you, what about money? So improved financial benefits, gender diverse management is to earn 28% more and be more profitable. And if you add culture diversity into it, the number is on 36%. And nothing is more expensive than a missed opportunity, said a white man, so must be true. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Niddal, maybe I can invite you back on stage as well. Have a little chat. I'm keen to explore. Thanks both of you for your presentations and for the key points. I have a lot of questions from that, and I scribbled some more down. I don't know where to start. But I guess I'd like to know when you realized you were an advocate for diversity and for the organizations you work for. I'd love to know.
I can go?
Yeah.
So I was raised in basically a dominant majority community where we were one of very few minority families. And not only that, but the community was also where white pride raised from. And I was basically like a young racist running around being like, I'm the good one here, y'all are the bad, about my own minority community, I was so blind spotted growing up, and at some point I started wondering and asking questions, and it's a really long process. It just is, and still in it to some extent. But the turning point was the first turn. There's been many, but one of the big turning points was I fell in love with an amazing woman that wears the Muslim scarf, and. One day we walked down the street, and she was wearing what she wears, and I was like in shorts and t-shirt. It was summer, tattoos all over, which I have, and I just realized people were looking at us, and suddenly I was like, everybody here thinks I'm telling her to be like that while I'm letting myself be like this, and I realized something is deeply wrong. And I'll just give you one more example, which I think is really wild. When we had our firstborn son, he was 8 months old. We used to skydive at that point. We went to this Maibo, which is like really out on the, don't know what you call it, but we were doing the skydiving holiday thing for a week, and we brought our son. We were sleeping in a tent. It was so cool. And then one day, he's sitting in his stroller, and there were like two elderly men who were like tickling with him. They loved him. They thought he was amazing. He had big curly hair, and he was responding to them in a funny way, so they fell in love with each other. And then the two elder men, they looked up at me and my partner, and they said to our son, "You're lucky you're not a girl."
Wow.
Yeah. They said that, and they didn't even flinch about it. It was like, go, back to that, And we froze and we were like, I mean, I don't even want to start analyzing because it's a very complicated topic from there, but yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
How about yourself, Aram? When did you realize you were an advocate?
Well, I think it started quite early. I was born in Iran and raised until I was 14. So I was forced to wear a scarf. So that was, I think, for me, it was very difficult experiencing sexism at that age. I remember having conversation at the age of 10 or 11 with my uncles. Why should I be this double identity that I have to wear something outside but not inside? And why there's that kind of dual culture. And the whole other thing around that is like legally, like having, like being told that you have like half value as men. I think that was just like triggered me in like a lot. So I was just like talking about it with my friends and like family and like my school. And then I think one of my teachers said like, you should be careful about what you're saying because here is not, the tolerance here is not about the freedom of for you. So I think that's when I learned that things are not fair just because I'm a woman or a girl. And then when I came to Denmark, which I felt it's freedom here, then it was really great, the feeling of I can be who I want to be. But then the discrimination and the other kind of arrived. Mm-hmm. And then I realized just being a woman and woman of color is just come with a much higher price. And I think in my work, at least when I started seeing I was not being included as part of the target audience, and once was told that I'm not the target audience, so that's why when I was pitching ideas, it was not landing on the pages because, I'm not the target audience. So I just realized, okay, so then there are people like me who will never be target audience. So I started a little blog, which was to communicating everything about fashion, food, and culture and design, things that I liked in English here in Copenhagen. And I think the snowball effect of that is like when you create a demand and you show that there is people who are keen to look at those things, great things happen. And then I think a couple of years later, 2 publications in Denmark, big ones, started doing like an international magazine for international target audience. And guess who they called first?
Fantastic.
Me. But it was very interesting because one of the challenges was like that you were saying in your presentation, then we are talking to like a global audience, but then I'm the only one representing the whole of the global, and then everybody else in the room, they have no clue. Like we were talking to Japanese audience, we were writing everything in Japanese. We had no Japanese in our team. And I was just like, I cannot represent Japan. Like, I can represent some sort of world, but like Japan, we need a Japanese person here in our team. So I think that's also what we're changing in Soulfuls. Like the whole team that we have, they're all over the place. We have one in London, we have one in Beirut, and when the power was shut and everything, we just had to work, slower and like wait for her to catch up with us. But that also put things in perspective.
And what was the response when you said we need a Japanese person on the team?
What do you think it was? Take a guess. No, I think we're good. Like we're doing good. See, like what you're doing it brings so much engagement, and I think we are good. And like we are collaborating with Condé Nast Japan, but it was just like but they're not in part of creating. Like they're helping us with translation, but they're not part of the whole strategy part of it. So I think it was. So we had we tried to have some consultancy on the side, but I think it would have made a huge impact if we had like a team within us here in Copenhagen to sit with us.
Interesting. And you both listed, you listed 5 barriers, Aram, in your presentation. Niddal, you said the 7 items that you had, the to-dos or not to-dos, if you like. I'm curious what the hardest thing about getting to people to act on these is.
I try to tell, there's so many times where you try to reach out to a big corporate or I'll give you an example. I'm really trying to reach out to the financial sector and tell them, guys, there is a huge potential out there and you're not hitting it at all. Because, I think it's really, really cool if we could get the financial sector to have that interest of earning money on the minority group, because the return is that they have to give a whole lot of equity to that group in terms of financial understanding, improving their financial situation, think long term, which does so much for equality, and which is the whole reason why I really want to get this thing going with them. But it's so hard coming through. Does anybody know anyone at Danske Bank?
There you have it. Anybody financial or listening afterwards, Niddal needs to talk to you. But is there a role vulnerability plays in that? You mentioned vulnerability before, and we talked about it before the event as well, actually. And it's something to me that seems key, whether that's leadership or even team members, from the grassroots all the way to the top. Does vulnerability play a role in not wanting to admit that you haven't done enough or something, or not wanting to say the right or wrong thing? What's your experience?
I think I want to go back to what you said, what is it that trigger or prevent people to do that?
Please, yeah.
I think because it's quite linked to vulnerability, it's losing power, because you have to give up from the power you have to make room for other people to be in the conversation or be in the room. Sometimes what it takes is you actually resign and say, I'm going to leave this position, so you hire someone who needs to be part of this team. So that power that you need to, give up comes with that vulnerability, that kind of connection that you have, that it's okay to not perform at your best or have the highest level of power. Or now I have been the CEO for 5 years for a company that maybe talks to the global company, but I've even traveled. Have I even been outside of the Denmark or Nordics? Maybe not. So maybe someone else who understands or closer with my target audience should come and sit in this position. So I think it's that vulnerability to kind of first losing that, being open to leave that power behind, but also the vulnerability to that, as we talked about, not being at your perfection. Talked about that with your team, because if you as a leader are that kind of having that pressure on yourself that I need to be perfect, then you don't embrace vulnerability, and you ask your team to be perfect as well. And who is perfect really? And when you then think about diversity, I think all of us have diversity within us. So if we walk around and say, I'm a white privileged man, I don't have diversity, that's just wrong. Because you also have diversity within you. There are part of you you're not so proud of, and part of you are very, very proud of. And guess what? You show what you're proud of, but you just, put down the other things. So if we are open to embracing our own diversity, I think it starts from within, then chances for as we embrace others with their diverse factors, it's much more.
Thank you. I'm curious about power. Just before we go to our video recording, you mentioned power. Can you explain what you mean by power? Because you're also in a leadership position and where you have power now as well. So what does that power look like, the power that you're talking about?
So power comes in different shapes. So I think the power is the power of decision. Sometimes as a leader, you can just say, okay, so I trust my team, so I give them the power to make that choice. But also the power of, sitting, when I showed you the front page of the top Danish male, sitting on top, they are in the position of power. And why not? Why there is no woman up there? So that's a massive question to ask, because no one will leave their positions of power, where they can tell whatever they want to say, or that club that they don't want to leave that club. So it's just leaving where you are. Maybe one day I'll leave my position. You've done it in Mino Denmark. You left your position of power, giving it to someone who was more suited for the next phase. Maybe one day I'm not the perfect person for Soulfuls, and then I will step aside, someone else come and drive it. Because we are talking to young generation. Maybe, I don't know, in 5 years, someone at the age of 25 will be leading Soulfuls. So that's admitting that, okay, I'm not the right fit and someone else should come. Or look around the room and say, where are women? Where are people of color? Where are my handicap? Where, like, literally ask yourself that and see if you should leave or you should stay.
Gosh, it feels very difficult. That vulnerability, like that comfort zone is suddenly busted out, and to admit that you're not the right person for this now, you want to pass it on.
Yeah,
How do you prepare yourself for that? Niddal, maybe you have some ideas as well.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. I mean, at some point, when I was CEO of Mino Denmark, I mean, I had this discussion with myself. Would I give up this position for a female leadership to take over my chair? And brutally honest, I would not. I mean, I would hope that when I decide to leave the chair, that a female leader would take over the chair. But it's such a hard discussion. I mean, with yourself, where does my privilege versus my own needs to realize myself versus the mission that I also care about for society. Where's the balance in that? I guess it's because I was having that same thought about as a message for today, like who's going to give up their seat for someone with a minority background to take over their work? I mean, no one. No one is going to stop. So if this has to happen, it has to come from a leadership point of view. When you're doing a restructuring in your company and you're going to let 200 people off, you got to have in that mission that this is also about being more inclusive and diverse in the future, because it has to be forced.
Thank you for such honest reflections. We're going to come back to you, but I'd like to take a pause just for a moment and watch one of our Changemaker interviews now that we promised. This is with Andrea Lee, Senior Manager of User Experience Research at LinkedIn, who joined us all the way from San Francisco to chat with our own Ditta Feel Round over there. Hi, Ditta. To hear about her personal perspective on DEI in the workplace. Enjoy.
Andrea, thank you so much for joining Designing the New Usual, Becoming Diverse.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start out with hearing a little bit about you and what it is that you do at LinkedIn.
Sure. My name is Andrea Lee, and my title is Senior Manager of UX Research at LinkedIn.
And I know that a part of what you do that we're going to speak about today is building teams, and especially making sure you build diverse teams when you work with the user experience. Could you speak a little bit to that?
So at LinkedIn, we have a global vision, which is creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And that translates to diversity being one of our core values. So when we are building teams, we are looking not only across different skill sets, but importantly, also across different life experiences and different social identities and cultural representation. And we are also working with global teams. So working with teammates who are in different geographies and across different time zones. And some of the work that has been the most enriching and interesting has been working with teammates who are really in different contexts and different cultures and bringing their points of view to the work that we're doing for that global workforce.
And I know that you have actually seen some possibility within the whole work from home movement.
Yeah, as we look at hybrid work as well and the opportunity to work from home as well as in the office, we're finding that we have the opportunity to even more work with people who are in different geographies. And that's been really enriching to building a broader team.
Besides building teams, you're also part of this allyship focus at LinkedIn. Could you speak about that as well?
We have a program at LinkedIn which is called Allyship Ambassador. And as an Allyship Ambassador at LinkedIn, I have the opportunity to facilitate allyship circles. And this is essentially bringing small groups of employees together across the company so that we can learn about allyship together and we can support one another to activate allyship in our day-to-day work. And part of this, as a facilitator, we really emphasize the importance of creating a space that is both safe and brave. So by safe, we mean that you can bring your personal experiences and your personal opinion without any fear of judgment. It's really a respectful space to learn. And by brave, we mean we really encourage ourselves to step outside of our comfort zone into a space where we're learning with each other and proactively contributing. So it creates this community where people are empowered in their diversity journey to learn more from one another and activate allyship.
And something I think is really cool about this is that it's not just a one-off thing, right? It's a commitment you make as well.
Yeah, we get together like every couple months and it's continuous work that we're doing. And another great aspect of the program is it's not just in one geography, but it's across multiple continents. So employees are doing this in different locations as well.
Inspired by this allyship work, my last question is, what can people watching this do today to start becoming more of an ally themselves at work?
So when starting out, I think it's very helpful to reframe the becoming diverse journey and the allyship journey. It's really less about the end goal or the final destination, and it's more about thinking about the long-term journey as the process itself, and that being the experience. So it helps to remember that really allyship is about creating connections, it's about deepening empathy, and it's about supporting others. And when you frame it as that journey, it becomes much easier to take that first step to get started.
And you've also spoken about, when we've talked before, about this committing to your own values and not as much looking at a brand value or something, but kind of rediscovering what your own values are, right?
Absolutely. When you look internally and do the internal work to actually connect your own personal values to diversity, it comes from a place that's extremely genuine and you have a lot of energy to really see through those values with other people.
Perfect. And I think doing it as a community as well is something that we've also spoken about before, not allocating this to like a diversity officer or something alone, but that it's a common journey for the whole company, right?
Yeah, I think we all have a responsibility, and we find that when we do it in community and do it with others, it becomes a natural conversation that we have every day and not something that one person is doing or one goal that we're looking to achieve, but it becomes part of our everyday work to activate allyship.
And that's all I had from that. Thank you so much, Andrea, for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Dita. It was a pleasure.
Andrea Lee, and also to Dita for leading the conversation as well. Thanks, Dita. Yeah. And there's a little reminder, there's 2 extra recorded interviews that will be part of the online release when that comes out Friday. So do look out for them. That's with Tina C. Nilsson and Sina Fazalpour as well. Aram and Niddal, thanks for still being here. I'd love to pick up a little bit where we've left off, and also with something that Andrea said, or Andrea, I beg your pardon, about activating allyship, forming your own values, creating safe and brave space to learn within, and it's less about the end goal and the actual journey itself. I think people have called it, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, I've heard before. In your experience, how prepared are workplaces to actually do that?
You go first.
Don't fight.
No, it's fine. How prepared are they? Yeah, I think I don't think they're very prepared, honestly, especially here in the Nordic. I think the word allyship, it's very new in our vocabulary, so I don't think something we are practicing here. as much or know the value of it. So I think it's something that I completely agree with what she was saying. It's definitely a journey, and I think it should be something that both mentorship, but the companies we're talking to, both around mentorship and allyship, I think is programs that needs to be in every company, at any size, honestly, because we all want to start things getting off in the right terms, and then if larger company wants to invest in diverse talents and young people, I think the last number I saw was 47% of millennials and 57% of Gen Z are actively looking for companies that have diversity inclusion in their leadership and across all the layers of company before they apply, because they want to be part of a culture that is fair and it's safe and it's inclusive. So I think it's something that these numbers just coming out, and like I think if companies want to invest in what's the future of talent, they really need to get on board with programs like that and allyship. And I don't know how many of you know what allyship means. Should we open?
Yeah, please do.
Mention that.
Just a quick show of hands. Is allyship a term that you've come across before? Some? Yeah, some. What does it mean to you?
For me, it's a collaboration of lifting something up. It can be, something about, for example, racism or different kind of discriminations, and it not putting that burden of that person who's been affected by it, but someone else who again is maybe your leader or someone in position of power, or just someone who has that distance with that, taking the matter up instead of just leaving it back to the person who has been affected by the situation. Mm-hmm. And the other way that we are communicating allyship in our community is having different allies in different rooms. So I'm not in many rooms, and you are not in the financial rooms that you were talking about. So if someone's sitting in that room, better speaking up about the matters who are out there, but they don't have the space in those rooms. And the other thing that we also talk about in creative industries is recommending each other. So keep recommending each other and be each other's allies, supporters. So it's a different way of being allyship, but I think it's a collaboration of lifting something up and opening doors for each other.
Some great actionable points there. Yeah. Niddal, what's your reflection?
On the allyship or on where the workspaces are?
Let's go with the workspaces first, and right, allyship if you wish as well.
I mean, we have a long way to go, man. But just looking at the statistics of it, if you're newly educated and you have a different sounding name than the Danish here in Denmark, your opportunity, it will be 20 months on average before you get recruited to a job. Whereas if your name is a majority-based name, it's 10 months. If you wear a headscarf, you're 60% less likely to be taken in for a job opportunity. If you are a male brown person, it's 50%. So the discrimination just in terms of getting access to the workplace is severely a big problem. And it kind of gives you the answer that these corporates are not able to bring allyship because they are the biggest barrier to equality.
What do you wish allyship was?
The solution. It has to be the solution, because without it, we won't get any change. We will be brown people knocking on the door of white people saying, "Yo, can we join?"
Where are the doors?
And it also has not to be an excuse. I mean, if you're not able to see talent, and if you're not able to see opportunity in someone because of their color, sexuality, gender, personal disability, whatever, physical disability, whatever may be the barrier for you, then you're the problem. But it's such a deeply rooted problem. I mean, we all carry this problem, but on a different level. So it's, yeah, and we have to work with it also. I mean, I also work with it every day. Yeah, I mean, for sure, I've so many errors in my time as a CEO, and I mean, I think about them constantly, how to be better in that. I mean, I think if we can start there, I mean, we can come a long way.
Thank you for being so open about this. I'd love to open it out to anybody in the audience. If you have a question or even a comment or just a thought you'd like to share, please do. Stick your hand up, shout out, whatever it is. You don't have to, though. I know that everyone's not always comfortable sharing in a group as well, so I have plenty of questions. But does anybody have anything they want to ask or share? Great. If something comes up, stick your hand up, no problem at all. Niddal, you just mentioned you actually work with this as well. In fact, you're both working in communications, content creation in some way, or advertising, marketing, if you like. How do you help companies not only communicate inclusively, but practice what they preach internally as well? Do you ever get a say in that?
Sorry, what was the question?
So how do you help companies not only communicate internally, but actually take the actions that we've been talking about and we covered today? I mean,
from my work, what we do is whether they come to us or we come to them and see an opportunity to work together, it always has to be on their premises of what they're ready to do. And where they're ready to start, we get in, we work within that frame of helping them. So they have to define their challenge. And from here, we can give them recommendations to where we could see further, let's call it opportunities. But we cannot put a gun at their head and ask them to change. So it's really, I mean, the opportunities that are there, we grab. But obviously we have dreams of being able to do more, always. But it's not in our authority to demand that we get to do more with our clients.
I'm interested in how open they are when you're having conversations around it.
For us, always, I mean, we create a safe room so that it's 100% important that they feel safe with us and that they know that they can tell us exactly how they see things and how it's the only way for us to be able to help them. If they're holding back and not opening up, we're not going to be able to help them to the extent that they want. I think it's very easy once you're in the room to read the room and know if where we are and help that process along.
It's interesting because Andrea Lee also said she mentioned about being safe and brave, creating a space that's around that. How do you define a safe space? Just in case anybody's listening to this either here or later on online.
We establish it, we tell it when we sit down. For the first time, we would always, I mean, the first thing we say is like, it's so important for me that you know that you cannot say anything wrong. And I totally understand that when you say something, it's because you are searching and navigating, and I am here to help you succeed in your challenges. I'm not here to condemn, I'm not here to judge. That has zero value for you and for me. And I'll use an example of myself. I'll say, when I was in Mino, I had colleagues of different types of minorities, whether sexual, gender-based, and having that opportunity to learn and ask questions and say stupid things and say something that wasn't okay, but I trusted them and they knew that my intentions were good. That they would help me be better, and I think having that as a way of saying, we want to do the same here, is a good way to get it going.
Thank you. How do you feel, Aram? Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think for us, looking at our community and how we engage companies to be kind of thinking differently. We love welcoming people into our community, so we always do that. We have different companies, we invite them to be there either as a mentor or as a guest. Or and the interesting thing is why we're focusing a lot in like creative industry, media industry, and entrepreneurship. In our last event, we had someone from IT industry there, IT industry. And then they recruited actually one of our girls. So now she's joining their company, and so they reached out to us and said like, so how can we make the transition phase, and also like for her, she's actually our very first diverse talent or like employee. So how can we make that, you know, that transition better and that experience for her, but also for us. So now we're in dialogue with them as well. So I think my part of what I do with content and our agency is personal branding. So I actually make our candidates and my clients branding, like from Wikipedia to their website to how they navigate their social media channels, as appealing as possible. So they are very hard to have on board, and also helping them with, you know, also I know for a fact there are a lot of statistics around that when women are around these communities and part of these communities who help them with their personal development, they get these women earn 10% more compared to others, because they get a lot of tools, a lot of like their confidence builds, but also getting the network expanding, and then in that way they also getting into the right connections and in the right positions. So for us, it's creating that safe space for our community, but also welcoming companies to be part of it, and hopefully match made in heaven.
Thank you.
Sina, thank you so much for being part of Designing the New Usual, Becoming Diverse.
Thanks for having me.
So could you start out by telling us what it is that you do?
So I'm Sina Fazalpour. I'm an assistant professor of philosophy and computer science at Northeastern University in Boston. And most of my research are in responsible and human-centered AI and philosophy of science and cognitive science. And I focus particularly on issues of justice, reliability, and diversity.
What have been some of the takeaways you have found in your research when it comes on not only implementing, but also measuring diversity within companies?
One of the core takeaways that requires iterating all the time is that we need to be very careful about what we mean by diversity and why do we conceive of diversity in that way. Because it has widespread implications. So let me kind of elaborate on what I mean. Diversity, when we use it, it can be understood in very different ways. So we might mean by diversity something like balanced representation. And by this, we might motivate this type of notion by referring to egalitarian ideals, right? Equality, and having different types of perspective in equal measure. But we can also mean something like proportionality and representativeness in the group. And here we might refer to ideals of representative democracy. Or we might mean something different. We might mean that we want our group to diverge from a homogeneous norm. Why does this matter? Well, these notions, as I said, they are grounded in different types of values and reasons. And each one of them might become relevant in different types of contexts. So imagine you're designing a product. In certain cases, you might think that, okay, I want to have a representative group of, let's say, different stakeholders to be here so that we have certain discussions and we can ground the reason for this choice in the idea that we want to have a representation of different stakeholders. Or if the product particularly impacts certain marginalized groups, we might want to include members of those groups more than their proportion in the community. And in that case, we want to say that what perspectives do they bring, given that they have been particularly adversely impacted here. And this also matters for how we measure diversity. So sometimes we think that, okay, I want diversity in this sense or that sense. But in practice, one thing that happens very often is that people rely on conventional measures of diversity that does not correspond to their intention. And so it's key to make sure that we are clear about the concept And we are using the right measures for measuring that context so that there's no mismatch between our intention and our implementation of diversity initiatives.
And when we're also looking at your research in group dynamics, I know you also have some thoughts on how to actually make diverse groups work, how you can kind of empower them to work together and not, I guess, go against each other or fight each other, to say it.
One thing that we know about diversity is that aside from some of the ethical and political rationales that I mentioned, is that diverse groups can outperform groups that are homogeneous. That is, diversity can actually functionally benefit group decision-making. Now, there are many different pathways about how this might happen. Individuals from different backgrounds might bring different types of perspectives on an issue. Or it might happen because diversity has a positive impact on group communication. In diverse groups, individuals are more likely to raise contestation, to dissent, a kind of a prominent opinion. In homogeneous groups, sometimes there's conformity, and these types of dissent does not arise, which means that groups actually perform bad. And sometimes in homogeneous groups, individuals are over-trusting of in-group members. And this, again, does not happen. In diverse groups, individuals pay attention to information with more scrutiny. Now, there are all these different pathways by which diversity can benefit group performance. But in real life, there are many other factors that impact these different pathways. And one of the most important one is what we can broadly call inclusion. These pathways can be beneficial when individuals are interacting in a context where they are respected, they feel included, and to some extent, they are comfortable with disagreeing with each other in a particular way. And particularly, this means individuals from dominant groups, historically dominant groups, need to really respect the opinion of individuals from marginalized communities. And because otherwise, if individuals are not comfortable with criticisms, with dissent, then diversity can lead to polarization and can lead to further marginalizations of individuals from marginalized communities. So this means very, very broadly that diversity initiative cannot be seen as a kind of a one-time thing that you make your group diverse. It requires a sustained work. It's a sustained process that you need to support people that you bring into your group, not just set them up for failure in a way that they're not respected. So it's really requires sustained effort and empowerment of members from particularly marginalized communities.
And that's all the time we had, Sina. Some really, really good points here. Thank you so much for taking the time to sharing those with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any questions or comments from the audience? Just want to make sure I'm including everybody. If so, I'd like to ask one more thing to wrap up, I think, because this has been a really open, frank conversation. Thank you for sharing so much. I'd like to ask something about progress. It's a simple question, maybe with a difficult answer. Don't know why I'm setting it up, but it's about, if we were here in a year's time, let's say, having this same conversation, what kind of progress do you hope has been made in a year? And is a year too short? What kind of timeline are we on?
Yeah, year is short, but at the same time, if we look at like global gender report that was released, we went back in the numbers, and if we look at since 2006, we went from to be the position of number 8 on the list. Now we're on 29. So I think a lot of things can happen in a year, but also if we look at the years, I think I have what I say is what things that doesn't get measured doesn't happen, and we need to put that in our goal of We want to be hiring, but also not only hiring to tick off some boxes, but what are the investment we are making inside the community, inside the organization, inside our team? How ready are we for actually having a new talent that we don't have, like we never had before? So I think it's an important dialogue to have, and a lot of work within the team and within individuals, especially among leaders, and then stepping into actually hiring and then making sure that they feel they belong and they're included. And again, they don't feel like they need to be asked to dance, but actually they can actually stand up and say, everyone, let's dance. So yeah.
How about yourself, Niddal?
That's a nice way of putting it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's funny because we're doing that as a campaign, like a New Year's resolution, you know, what do you want to change this year?
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm doing the copy on it right now, and you know, so I've been giving it some thoughts. I want to set the world on fire. I want the youth to mobilize. This whole climate agenda would not be the same if this young generation that is such an amazing impactor of change hadn't gone to the streets, if we didn't have Greta, and if we didn't have another millions and millions and millions of youths that demand that we change society for a better world. And I hope that if I can leave a small impact for 2022, it is to give more encouragement to all of the young new voices that are coming up, that are so brave, taking on this extremely difficult topic where you get hated within the time that you say hi in a microphone from some, and meet enormous resistance to stand brave and insist on their truth, and help us change this agenda structurally all the way through society on a global level.
Thank you. Perhaps an idea.
Always.
Yeah, but perhaps an idea is to get the youth on stage with us here in a year's time as well, and hear from them and hear how they would like to drive the agenda as well. That's a thought. With that thought, we're going to wrap up. I want to give people a chance to be able to discuss this as well, and kind of grab you for a chat as well. Some incredibly honest sharings. Thank you ever so much. I really do appreciate it. Also to Andrea Lee, and also Tina C. Nielsen and Sina Fazalpour, who you will get to see their videos as well. Thanks to everybody here as well for coming, and for, you know, it really looks like you're engaged with what you're saying as well. I think that's very easy because you've been sharing so much. Thank you. There's a chance to continue the discussion in a few weeks' time, around December the 8th, actually, on Clubhouse, where you can bring your takeaways from this. Maybe you've had time to reflect on it. You would be very, very welcome to join. Diddor and I will be there, along with others as well. And the next Designing the New Usual, number 4, will be sometime in the early new year. It's normally in about 3 months' time-ish, something. And we'll be looking at life-centered design, actually, for that final one there. So you're very welcome there as well. There's a lot to dive into there. Until then, from the Index Project and from Designit, I'd just like to say thank you very much from everybody behind this event, technical, and everyone that's been organising it. Thank you very much as well. It wouldn't be possible without you, and it certainly wouldn't be possible without our guests and the audience as well. So thank you. Lots of thank yous. All the best. Bye. See you next time.